was the bicentennial year, 1976, and Boston was alive with excitement and love of history. The new City Hall was built. There was just an enormous amount of spirit.
It was a hinge moment, and maybe Polly and Earl were responding to that.
Earl and I got the idea for Boston by Foot in a restaurant in Harvard Square, having lunch with a former art student of Earl's from Wellesley, who was a docent in the Chicago School of Architecture Foundation. And her question rings in my ears today. Polly, why don't you start something like this in Boston? I did go to Chicago, talked with a number of people who were all very encouraging. I thought about it, and it took shape right there.
She had a tidal sort of ability to sort of make things happen, regardless of what all the problems and possibilities might be.
You had to depend on the Boston Globe for publicity. This was way, way before the internet. And I was very fortunate that I lived in the town of Lincoln, and Tom Winship, who was the publisher of the Globe, lived in Lincoln. I wrote him a letter spelling out the dream of Boston by Foot. A couple of weeks later, I got a call from Bill Fripp, who was the Society editor. He said, "My boss told me to call you." And that was it. He wrote an article called Sturdy Legs and Keen Minds, and everyone in the Boston area wanted to join up. I found a sponsor, the Society of Arts and Crafts, and the first year I had a telephone in a closet in their gallery on Newbury Street. I persuaded them that they needed an educational component. Gerald Bernstein, who was a distinguished architectural history professor at Brandeis, I attended his lecture at the Institute for Contemporary Art in the Firehouse on Boylston Street, and thought, this is great. We can offer a training program for guides chronologically, starting with colonial Boston and moving into the contemporary city. I wanted to line up the very finest lecturers to train this new group, and I got the cream of the crop. The first tours were Beacon Hill, and what is now the heart of the Freedom Trail had a long title, Centers of Government and Business, Old and New. And then we wanted to educate young people, and it turned out my oldest son, Skylar, gave us the name, Boston by Little Feet. The first tours were $2, and members of the Society of Arts and Crafts were free. I think when something is brand new, it takes a long time to prime the pump. Many, many times the guides would stand and wait faithfully, and no one would come. The biggest challenges we faced during the first 10 years were to carve a place as our organization and provide the services in the most excellent way we could with a very, very limited budget. We had an outstanding first class. The requirements were so strict. They had to have an interview. They had to agree to attend 6 lectures. They had to write 4 papers, take a final exam, give a practice tour. 72 applied, and the final tally was 35 guides. One of them, Peg Body, became our program coordinator. And when all else failed and we couldn't get a guide for a special tour, we would come in, she from Melrose and me from Lincoln, and give the tours. I wanted a beginning and a middle and an end to every season. We started out with a training program and then a lovely graduation. Then we had the tour season and culminated with an awards ceremony. We recognized the guides and the wonderful job they did. They're not seeing it from a trolley or hearing it from a machine. They're actually experiencing it.
And I think that's what makes Boston by Foot different from other ways of understanding the city. You're there. If it's Beacon Hill, your knees are hurting. That's part of the experience.
And Boston lends itself to just what we're doing more than almost any other city because the sites are close by and the sites are so interesting.
What's great about a walking tour in a place like Boston is that you see everything in context.
Partly because we live in such a quick world. People are proud to learn a little bit more about the history of Boston.
You can really explore different aspects of the city. There's nobody else that does a kids tour. There's nobody else that does a tour that's focused on the engineering of Boston. And we're also the only group that really works with volunteers.
I really admire the docents at Boston by Foot because they make sure they know what they're talking about.
There is nobody who is a Boston by Foot guide who hasn't read at least 3 or 4 books about whatever they're going to give you a tour about.
I don't think we've ever given a tour that has not been written up in a very careful way.
We always plan everything about a year in advance. I think most people would not expect that from a group of volunteers, but I think we are as professional as anybody else in the tour business.
They're given good material and they're given the leeway to choose among the facts that we give them.
A lot of the other tour groups have a set script. They do the same thing over and over again, whereas a Boston by Foot guide is always exploring and learning. We have continuing education events, so people might figure out something else that they want to talk about on a tour. Everybody has a slight different interest, so you could take any one of our tours, and while the route would be the same, there will be different information based on what that person is interested in. Boston by Little Feet is my favorite because you never know what's going to spark a kid's interest. If you've got a bored older sibling, how do you connect with them? You have to ask them questions, get them involved. They're a hard audience, but when you get an 8-year-old tell you, that was the best part of my vacation, it's the best. We really are a community and an organization of people of like minds. We want to learn and enjoy the city of Boston. Our Facebook page, the Volunteers of Boston by Foot, is super active. There's a couple things every day. Did you see this building is opening? Did you see this plaque got moved? It's a group of people that are enthusiastic about the city and share that enthusiasm.
The thrill that I get when I hear that this has expanded their lives, their horizons.
It's all these crazy characters, different walks of life, different ages, different backgrounds, people who like the things I like, who don't find me strange that I want to go to a lecture about the alms books in Boston poorhouses. They embrace that. Without Boston by Foot, I'm not sure what my life would be like. It would be bleaker, I think, and not as full and rich as it is today.
Then, thanks to Sam, really, and several guides, and the Colonial Society of Massachusetts, we were able to move to the Bulfinch Mansion, which is our home now for, I hope, many, many years.
Over the course of the 40 years, Boston by Foot has been around. Boston has changed immensely. Neighborhoods that were once perhaps on the edge of where we would venture to go are now up and comings. And then what's great about being part of Boston by Foot is that we can explore those changes.
As you probably all know, there used to be in the Back Bay.
One of the biggest changes is the creation of the architectural cruises, co-sponsored by the Boston Society of Architects. They've been very successful.
Power plant for the Boston Elevated Railway.
One of the miracles of the new Boston by Foot is that ticketing can be done in advance, and it can all be done by credit card. This is in sharp contrast to my memories of guides standing on a street corner, leafing through dollar bills, giving change, and I would always worry that there would be a bad guy around the corner ready to grab the money. So it was a different world.
People come on our tour and post us, and I've definitely had people show up now and say, Oh yeah, my friend came and put it on Facebook and it looked fun, so I'm going to do it now. That's really how people are finding our tours, I think, most of the time now.
The things that have never changed are the quality and the enthusiasm and the spirit of the tours. To see guides from the early classes still giving tours and to see new guides coming in.
You know, who's going to be that spark that comes up with a whole new tour? You just never know who's going to be the next Don Bachler, the next John Heller, the next Denny Donaldson.
This wonderful sense of dedication and fun still continues. When I think of Boston by Foot, I am filled with pride. The workings of our wonderful board of trustees, they have all kinds of goals and projects. I think there's just no stopping us.